Good day and a very warm welcome to our event today, Driving an Advanced Manufacturing Revolution panel discussion held in partnership with the Global Victoria Trade and Investment. My name is SzeKi and I'm the Executive Director of the Community and Brand team here at SGInnovate. It is my honor and pleasure to be opening today's event alongside Ms. Rebecca Hall, the Commissioner for Victoria to Southeast Asia. On behalf of SGInnovate, thank you and a very warm welcome from all of us. Just a little bit about SGInnovate. We believe that deep tech has the potential to address the world's most pressing challenges. Our mission is to work with entrepreneurial scientists to build and launch impactful deep tech solutions. And we do this by investing in startups, developing talent, and matching with exciting deep tech companies. A large part of what we do here at SGInnovate is in building our community through events such as today's, where we bring together players across the innovation ecosystem so that we can share best practices and knowledge in your respective fields. And today's topic on advanced manufacturing is an important one. The global advanced manufacturing market is set to reach some 500 over billion by 2027. Of which Asia Pacific is expected to record huge growth trajectory due to the increased spending and investment in this area. And in Australia, we see a strong commitment and efforts on this front, spanning business support, research development, talent growth, and much more. We're very eager from today's session to understand some of the initiatives that you have, such as the Automotive Innovation Labs program in South Australia and Victoria, and the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Fund that you have. In Singapore, advanced manufacturing has been identified as a key focus sector, with the players from across the ecosystem coming together and pushing towards development, test bidding, deployment of smart technologies in our manufacturing sector. And as a result, what we've seen is some 2,600 new technologies being deployed to improve productivity and efficiency in the past 5 years, driven by Singapore's Research, Innovation and Enterprise Plan. So we are planning also to convert all cars to hybrid or electric vehicles by 2040. And it's these initiatives that we see that there's going to be a greater need for innovation and collaboration between players in the ecosystem. I'm looking forward to hear from the panelists, and I'd like to thank my esteemed panelists for being here and taking time off your busy schedules to share your knowledge. I would like to also say a big thank you to the State Government of Victoria and the Invest Victoria and Global Victoria teams for the wonderful partnership we've had in the past years, and I really look forward to more collaborations to come. Before we start the panel, it is my pleasure to invite the Commissioner to please say a few words. Commissioner Hall, please.
Thank you so very much for that warm welcome, and of course the partnership that brings us here today. So can I just echo my welcome and good morning to everyone joining us here from Singapore or across Southeast Asia, also to those of you who are dialing in from Australia. My name's Rebecca Hall and I am the Commissioner for Victoria to Southeast Asia. I happen to be based here in Singapore at the moment as well, so it's been fantastic to get to know the team from SGInnovate and to see the partnership in action. I've certainly noticed over the past 12 months since coming to this role that our collaboration has strengthened as both of us are thinking about the role of industry development, innovation, investment to shape a post-COVID economic recovery. Before we do move to the panel, I'll just share a little bit more about what we do, the team here and the team that's driving this collaboration. So our role as the Victorian Government Trade and Investment team, we're responsible for advancing Victoria's interests in Southeast Asia. So we do this by facilitating commercial engagements between businesses, attracting foreign direct investment into Victoria and strengthening bilateral relationships through strategic collaboration. We're fortunate and hopefully we've got some participants on the line. We do cover all of Southeast Asia. So we have offices in Singapore, in Jakarta, in Kuala Lumpur, and most recently have just opened an office in Ho Chi Minh City as well. I think the endeavours that we're looking towards the future of advanced manufacturing, all of Southeast Asia has a key role to play in that. And I know our colleagues in Singapore are also leading across the region. Just a little bit more about us. We are Invest Victoria is our team in Victoria, whose role is to assist companies from Southeast Asia with their investment projects and expansion plans into Melbourne and wider Victoria. Some of the services that we offer to companies include market entry strategies. And the key point, I think, is that these services are always bespoke, dependent on the individual company need. And we really appreciate the partnership with SGInnovate to both work together in creating those win-win opportunities for companies who might be looking at establishing in Victoria. This does include introductions to key stakeholders, government and private sector, market research, and assisting with grants and incentives. You mentioned a few of those new programs, which I'm sure will come up in the panel session. Let me just turn briefly now to Victoria's role as a hub for tech and advanced manufacturing. We know for us, it's a $30 billion industry and the cornerstone of our economy, providing jobs, boosting exports and contributing to economic growth. But we're also seeing, of course, a global evolution of global manufacturing, which creates new opportunities for companies to think innovatively, to use advanced technologies, to expand R&D and international connections. So we are really excited to share some of the things that are happening in the autonomous and electric vehicle space. And I personally am looking forward to hearing more from Shane and Professor Sloan on the role of industry and institutions, our research institutions, in driving this. For us, we're biased, but many of you, those coming in from Melbourne, get to live and breathe this every day. We think we have a great combination of world-class talent, excellent R&D opportunities, and we get to do this in one of the world's most livable cities in a great state in Australia. So it's that winning combination with the support from government and infrastructure that mean that we're ready to partner, we're ready to engage, and we want to continue to be a global leader in research, education, innovation, and particularly today, focusing that on advanced manufacturing. So with that brief introduction, I want to now hand over to Angela Krepcik, who's a Regional Director with the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Resources, who's going to provide a deeper overview of the advanced manufacturing industry in Victoria. And also then we'll be facilitating the panel with Professor Ken Sloan and Shane Ambrose, the co-founder of AEV. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's good to be here. So welcome everyone and good morning, Singapore. So great to be here, as I mentioned, to present on Victoria's advanced manufacturing industry. I'm going to keep this presentation fairly high level, but at least it'll provide a glimpse of our manufacturing sector in Victoria. And before I put up the slides, there is a lot of information on these slides, so I'm happy to share those slides with anyone who is interested after the session. So just bear with me.
Yeah, the screen is shared now.
Yeah, unfortunately, there we go, I've got it now. Great, thank you for that. And my apologies for the technology issues there. If you can go to the next slide then for me.
Yes.
So just some house rules. Please ensure that you're on mute at all times if you're not speaking. And when we open the floor to the questions, please raise your hand and don't forget to put your hand down. And also, if you prefer, please type your question in the meeting chat. Next slide, please. Great. So I'm going to provide you with an overview of advanced manufacturing in Victoria. Then we'll go into the Q&A panel, and then we'll go and open up the questions to everyone that's around the room. And then we'll spend some time wrapping up. Thank you. As I mentioned, there's a lot of information that I'm going to present to you, and I'm happy to share the slides again. The manufacturing in Victoria is a cornerstone of our economy. The industry provides a diverse range of jobs, high quality exports, and substantial economic growth. Victoria also leads the nation in manufacturing jobs and in R&D spending. To put this all into perspective, Victoria's manufacturing sector is responsible for over 80% of the state's exports. We also employ over 365,000 people in this sector, making us the largest manufacturing state by activity and number. Next slide, please. Victoria is also home to world-leading manufacturers, boosted by supportive ecosystems and industry clusters and also precincts. As Rebecca mentioned, Victoria has a highly skilled workforce that provides us with a solid foundation for growth. It's supported by our world-class capabilities in R&D, design and engineering, and supply chain logistics. In Victoria, significant opportunities also exist in areas such as defence and advanced materials such as carbon fibre. Next slide, please. So I think we haven't got all of that slide there, but that's okay. This is a map of Melbourne, and hopefully many of you have been here before, if not Victoria. And as you can see, our manufacturing sector is spread right across the whole of Victoria and its regions. The small bit there in grey is our home to global headquarters, is Melbourne, home to global headquarters, design and engineering companies, R&D, and major financial and professional services organisations. The largest manufacturing activity across Australia is in Melbourne's southeast. So that's just on the right-hand side. It covers 70% of Melbourne's advanced manufacturing industry. And the southeast, where I come from, is home to significant manufacturing sectors such as transport equipment, automotive transport components, plastics and chemicals. It also has a growing medical technologies and pharmaceutical industry, and is the largest food and fibre sector. And examples of some of the companies that we have as headquartered in our area, and many of these names will be familiar with you: Iveco Trucks, Kenworth, Robert Bosch, PPG Paints, all doing high R&D and innovation, also including Dulux, Siemens, Simplot, Mondelez, Ego Pharmaceuticals, Pfizer and GSK. And that's just a broad brush overview of what we have in our southeast region. The next map, if you can move to the next slide. Here's our map, just the one above that, thank you. Here's the map of Victoria. The grey area relates to the previous slide that I mentioned, which is our Melbourne region. But manufacturing is also spread across regional Victoria. And regional Victoria offers a lot of opportunities to invest and do business, such as its low business costs, affordable industrial land, access to high quality raw materials and resources, road and rail links to other capital cities such as Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and strongly supported by a robust freight transport and logistics capability. Next slide, please. Our manufacturing strategy was released a few years ago. It's our blueprint for the future that sets out 4 actions that realise our vision. And they are to prepare for the jobs of the future, innovate to capture high value manufacturing opportunities, foster a globally competitive business environment, and build scale, capability and supply chain excellence. Our key future industries with core manufacturing capabilities include our construction technology sector, defence technologies, food and fibre, medical technologies and pharmaceuticals, new energy technologies and transport technologies. Okay, next slide, please. So despite the automotive manufacturing industry exiting from Australia about 3 or 4 years ago, transport equipment is still a significant sector, with some examples here in rail such as Bombardier, the automotive aftermarket sector such as ARB, aerospace, Boeing, and Boeing in Victoria is the largest facility outside of North America here in Melbourne as a FYI, and buses such as Volgren and Caravans. Some of our food manufacturers have extremely sophisticated manufacturing processes in place, including the application of 4.0, and also many have food innovation and R&D facilities. Equipment manufacturing is a real strength of the local sector, with companies like Anchor serving a global market, and of course Morand supporting the F-35 defence program. Fabricated metal product manufacture is extremely broad subsector, where we have a large industrial base such as BlueScope and ASA Abloy. Chemical manufacturing is also becoming increasingly significant for the local industry. But moving towards additive manufacturing, Victoria is the nation's leader in additive manufacturing, with more 3D printing machines than any other state in Australia. Leading specialist facilities in Victoria provide additive technologies in complex design fabrication and prototype testing and design. In terms of composite manufacturing, Victoria is home to a growing carbon fibre and composites manufacturing sector. We have a precinct in regional Victoria, Geelong, that has manufacturing operations for several companies who supply carbon composites to a wide range of industry sectors, including automotive, industrial, sporting goods, medical, and also defence. Next slide, please. Victoria's tertiary education sector is key to the state's manufacturing industry, with 10 universities ranked amongst the world's best, and produces around 30% of Australia's graduates in IT, engineering, science and related technologies. Other important assets that complement our research infrastructure include the Australian Synchrotron, Carbon Nexus, Melbourne Centre for Nanofabrication, Monash Centre for Additive Manufacturing, RMIT's Advanced Manufacturing Precinct, and Swinburne University's Factory of the Future, amongst many others. Next slide. So the Victorian government and also the Commonwealth government are really backing our advanced manufacturing industry and driving investment, R&D, innovation and COVID recovery. We have programs available for businesses to grow and thrive. Over the next few years, we will invest in our manufacturing industry, utilising two fairly significant funds. And they are our $120 million fund into manufacturing and industry growth initiatives, and of course our $2 billion Breakthrough Victoria Fund to drive investment in research, innovation and the next breakthrough opportunities, expected to create over 15,000 new jobs. This, of course, is complemented by the federal government funding of $1.3 billion in their Modern Manufacturing Initiative. These figures are figures that we have never seen before. We will be supporting, and together with the Commonwealth, areas of priority, including resources technologies, critical minerals processing, food and beverage, medical technologies and medical devices, recycling and clean energy, and of course, defence and space. So the next slide. So as mentioned earlier, Victoria moved away from its traditional manufacturing about 3 or 4 years ago. We're now developing a hub for manufacturers in electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and other innovative products. These specialised companies, like we have today, AEV, they're taking advantage of growing markets for new automotive products and new opportunities, which will draw new and specialised manufacturing jobs to Melbourne and future-proof the local transport technology sector. I hope this paints a picture of what advanced manufacturing looks like in Victoria. I'd like to thank you for your time, and now I'd like to move towards introducing our list of panel speakers. Thank you. So today we have Suchitra Narayan from SGInnovate. We also have Shane Ambry, the founder and Chief Financial Officer of Applied Electric Vehicles. Welcome. And of course, Professor Glenn Sloan, known to many of us, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Senior Vice President, Enterprise and Governance at Monash University, Australia's largest university. There you go. So I'm going to pose the first question to you, Ken. So the first question is, what do you think are Victoria's key strengths in advanced manufacturing? And I'll give you something like 4 minutes to answer.
That's great, Angela, and hello everyone, and just say I'm delighted to be with you and to be part of today's event. So Angela, you've given a very comprehensive overview of Victoria and also how it relates not only to Australia and to the world. So I'm going to hone in on 2 areas, but these are examples of 2 areas. The first I will talk about is the fact that we operate as an ecosystem, that you have not only employers and companies and organizations that work together and work collaboratively on new technology in different industries, but also universities and research hubs also work collaboratively. So when you are working with Victoria in this space, you can get access to the breadth of capability wherever it is, wherever those precincts are, wherever the companies are, the universities are. There's a natural tendency to work in a collaborative way. The benefit of that means that we are able to address multiple industry sectors, as you said in your presentation. So we're not limited to any particular industry sector. We've actually got something to contribute to the vast majority of high value, innovative industries that are needed not only in Australia, but in other parts of the world. You talked about aerospace. We could also talk about biomedical manufacturing. We can talk about vehicles, autonomous drones, and various other aspects. There's a whole range and breadth of what we've got. So we bring a cross-sector approach. The other thing I would say is about talent, not only talent in companies, but the next generation of talent. So in universities, we collectively try to work to nurture the next generation of talent. One example that we have at Monash is we have a cooperative program across the breadth of engineering where we encourage our students to get up to 12 months of flexible work experience with different organizations over the entire length of their degrees. So we mentor them, support them, open the doors and make it possible for them to get there. And Monash isn't the only university that has this type of arrangement where we're looking to give our students real world experience of what they're going to do and what they're going to find. But the co-op example is a really strong one. The other thing I would say, final thing I would say, is that we have a really supportive government. And so the state government really does get behind the ideas that are coming out of companies and also coming out of universities and research hubs. And if they can see a way of doing it, they will work with us to find a way to do it. So I would encourage any of the organizations that are looking at us, it's a can-do, will-do culture, and it's very future-looking. So yeah, I hope that gives the flavour.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And look, we do work closely with Monash University, particularly while I'm in the southeast, and we're doing a lot of work around the Victorian Heart Hospital and attracting investment around that site. So I think collaboration is key, and I think Victoria is very good at it. I just wanted to see whether Shane would like to add to that, but I think he might have dropped off. Dropped off by accident. Okay, he'll probably come back on, so I might throw that question to him. So while we're waiting for that, I think I might throw it then to Chitra before he comes back on, if that's all right. The question to you is, what is the investment landscape in Singapore and any particular subsectors in advanced manufacturing that is attracting more interests from investors?
Thank you, Angela, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. So I'm SzeKi for short, if that's easier, and I spent my career in management consulting, commercial advisory, acquisitions, investments across Australia and Asia, actually. So really excited to have the opportunity to share some ideas on this platform. I come from a perspective of venture building and investments because in SGInnovate, we, like what Professor Ken just mentioned, we work hand in hand with researchers to translate R&D in Singapore into commercially viable ventures. So if I give you a background, maybe I'll give you a little bit of a background on Singapore, and then we can click down into advanced manufacturing. So we've got multiple advantages from a tech perspective as a global node of technology, innovation, enterprise. One is, of course, the geographical location, because it gives you access to markets like China, North Asia, which are critical markets in Asia Pac, but also really in context of high quality infrastructure in terms of the business environment, the corruption-free government, the respect for IP, world-class institutions like the National University of Singapore and NTU. There is also a very, very tightly knit government and regulatory machinery, which is a massive advantage for not just corporates on this call, but also for the startups, right? You'll find a very, very seamless interaction between academia, business, and the government. What is interesting for the corporates out there on this call is the startups here are approach the market a little bit differently, I think, to the Australian market, because I've worked with startups in Australia. I used to work with eCorp, and then in the United States, I've worked in Silicon Valley as well, because the domestic market is so small that the opportunities and challenges are really different from these other countries. So startups that are born in Singapore, they're born global, right? They need to build out processes. They need to build out structure from a very early stage to capitalize on the global opportunity. By contrast, if you look at like a Silicon Valley startup, they have massive domestic opportunity, and then they do that expansion before being faced with the challenges of overseas expansion. And I think, to be honest, maybe I'm biased, but I think very few governments pay as much attention to the startup community as the Singapore government does. If you look at the research and innovation budget in 2020, there was 19 billion that was allocated for research and innovation. We had 150 million commitment from the National Research Foundation for AI. In fact, in last year's budget, we had 300 million under a startup equity scheme to provide investments in deep tech startups with very strong IP in deep technologies. So clicking down to, I guess, SGInnovate, we are publicly funded, privately run, and we invest in deep tech. What we define as deep tech really is where there's really strong intellectual property. It's founded on very strong scientific research, difficult to replicate, high barriers of entry, typically B2B, in summary. And we focus a lot on transformational technologies, so AI, advanced materials, robotics, medical devices, AV, quantum, and those that have horizontal applications across usually multiple industries, so biotech, food tech, agri-tech, advanced manufacturing being one of them as well. If I click down to advanced manufacturing, I'm trying to have like a structured approach to the conversation. Manufacturing has been a very critical pillar of Singapore's economic growth, right? It contributes about 20% of the GDP. And if you look at the production readiness index that was produced by the World Economic Forum, we ranked #2. So the types of manufacturing, though, are typically high-end, high-value manufacturing, so pharmaceutical, aerospace, energy, chemicals. Massive advantage in terms of location, because we are right spot bang in the middle of Asia. It's a fantastic port as well to pass through. It's a bunkering hub. Dense network in terms of researchers, Institute of Higher Learning. It's a regional HQ for thousands, if I'm not mistaken, about 2,500 multinationals, which allows us to test products, to test solutions, to test business models. The process, availability of talent, government support, private sector support, MNC, startup. So it kind of, all comes together as a perfect storm to produce the next gen of solutions for advanced manufacturing. But to cite specific examples, and then I'll do a quick wrap. In Singapore, if you look at Rolls-Royce, it's going digital with its operations, right? It's looking at overview of its product life cycle. If you look at, there's a German automation center with sensor technology. Infineon just announced $105 million that it's pumping into a smart factory. So additive manufacturing, like Angela mentioned, is another massive growing field. Singapore is a massive consumer of additive manufacturing as well, in terms of 3D printing solutions. In fact, about 2 days ago, I participated in a panel discussion where we were talking about 3D printing of food and edible commodities. So digital twinning is the other one. So Angela, if I focus on areas that you asked me to highlight here, I'd say the upcoming areas for us is digital twinning. It would be robotics. We're seeing AI solution, IoT, edge computing. Personally, I'm working on a robotics company that produces it's a tactile solution. It gives robots, cobots, a human sense of touch. So really it is not just vision, but also humanizing the sense of touch with as much possibility as the skin does, which is about 10,000 sensors per square centimeter. So in conclusion, let me wrap up. I know we're short of time. Look, there are lots of opportunities for startups in advanced manufacturing. I think the journey is hard, but the reality is that is why we are presenting events like today. Is there's an entire ecosystem, there's a village behind all of you for the startups out there. So reach out to us. We'll be happy to work with you either in Victoria or in Singapore to help connect you to the corporates and make sure you're on the path to being that next unicorn. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to help.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. I think we might go to Shane now, since you dropped off for a bit, and I asked the question to Ken, what do you think are Victoria's key strengths in advanced manufacturing? And I just wanted to see whether you wanted to add to, I don't know whether you heard all of Ken's or some of it, but I'd like to ask you to comment on that particular question.
Sure, thanks. And thanks to everybody. Thanks to SzeKi for covering for me while I did get my technology back on. I can build your autonomous car, but I can't get my connection to the internet to be reliable today.
Oh, sorry, Shane, and we must say that at the last minute we had to get you on board today, so thank you.
So in terms of our strengths in advanced manufacturing, I suppose I'll bring in and apply the perspective to it. And for context, guys, we've been working with Angela and the Victorian government team for probably about 5 years now. It's been a very useful relationship, and we've also spent time in Singapore, so I can echo SzeKi's comments about the ecosystem there. To a certain extent, some of what I'll talk about today really echoes what we've seen in places like Singapore and how we can challenge Victorians and Australians to drive our ecosystem to the same sort of level. In terms of what we've been doing over the last 5 years, it's about pre-production and about design and engineering and integration of a whole heap of different technologies to come up with a solution. And what's been really good for us is a really deep resource pool in terms of engineering. It seems strange when you hear about places like Silicon Valley, but we've got better access to engineers here than they have in Silicon Valley, because there's probably a better balance between demand and supply here. So we can get really good world-class engineers here who want to work in Australia, don't want to go to America, and we can get them at quite a good price compared to what we pay for the same sort of resource in Silicon Valley. So that's been really valuable to us, and tied to that is the world that Ken lives in, which is, the research and the tertiary education sort of environment, because you guys are producing the engineers and the STEM specialists that will come into our business and provide the innovation. But also there's a lot of great fundamental research going on in the space of robotics and AI, which really feeds straight into the product proposition that we're working on. Our vision is not to create an electric car. That's pretty much been done. Our vision is to create digitally controlled mobility robots and to integrate robots onto our robot to do jobs. So we've got this picture that we have of our vehicle with a robotic arm on it, because it's picking things up from the sidewalk. It's doing that sort of stuff. So integrating all of that's great, and the education sector in Victoria is very strong, and we value that. Apart from that, as Angela had pointed out in her presentation, whilst there's been a contraction in what you might call automotive 1.0 in Australia, for very good reasons, which we can go into in depth if we need to, there's still a very strong ecosystem out there that supports us. So as an early stage organisation, when it comes to things like getting expert assistance in FEA analysis, or getting prototype parts seen in certain machine, getting access to laboratories where we can do analysis on the dynamometer of our vehicle performance, our energy efficiency, our solar gain, our our performance in different temperatures, high temperatures and low temperatures. We've got access to all of that very close to where we operate. In fact, we joke a little bit that sometimes we'll push our prototype vehicle out of the factory round the corner to the lab where we do this work. So you can't do that in other places in the world, and that's really valuable to us. There's the typical sort of stuff like supply lines. We do have a good, shipping and logistics environment here. But I suppose the last point that's most important to me is that there's government support. And I think that's changing. I think we're seeing the evolution of government support driven by exogenous factors as well as internal factors. As we respond to the contraction of Auto 1.0 in Australia, the government's leaning into solving that problem and supporting the industry. And we couldn't do what we're doing without that support. Probably gone over my minute there, Angela. I'm apologising.
No, that's okay. Well said. Thank you very much for that. And, it really, some of the points that both you and Ken made about the support from Victorian government is just going to only increase due to COVID recovery as well. And you saw from my presentation that we've invested quite a lot of money to help our manufacturing firms grow and thrive, use this the utilisation of new technologies, innovation, R&D is really important and high on the agenda. So, but while we have you, Shane, I'm going to pose another question to you, and that is, where do you see the electric vehicle and autonomous vehicle market for Victoria, Australia in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm pretty bullish on it, to be honest. I suppose if you look at the context here, we've gone through a period of change and reinvention in Australia, and in particular in Victoria. We have had contractions. There's no point shying away from that. But if you talk about my vision for Victoria in this space, I feel that we need to be moving from automotive 1.0 to mobility 2.0. I don't think Australia is the place where you do traditional automotive manufacturing, because the tyranny of distance we have for shipping and some of the challenges that go with that, a relatively small domestic market, not as small as Singapore, as SzeKi pointed out, but still relatively small. It means we need to be thinking global about our markets. And when you look at the competitive strengths that we have in some areas like technology and innovation, engineering, that sort of stuff, and you look at some of the things that challenge us, like shipping distances and cost effectiveness and so forth, we need to reinvent. And so for me, I'm quite excited about what I see. I'm seeing, as Angela's pointed out, a response from the government to things like COVID and the challenges that has to our local economy and its resilience, the shifting environment for AI, robotics, new technology, engineering. I'm seeing the government leaning into that. And I think that gives us the ability to say, right, well, we're going to move to 2.0 from 1.0. I think if we're doing this right by sort of 2023, I want to see Australia and Victoria in particular being acknowledged globally, like we'll see in Singapore or Israel, as a powerhouse of commercialising new technologies in the mobility space. And I think we have the building blocks to do that and the momentum behind it. And I think from that point forward, it's a matter of finding how we take the skills and capabilities we have in advanced manufacturing, and we selectively pick the parts that we can do really well here, while avoiding the parts where we don't have the competitive advantage against the global market. And so you'll see that when you look at the strategy for A&V, it's not about going out and being Tesla. We're playing in a niche market, in specialty markets, where we have a competitive and a technological advantage, and we're looking to take that to the global marketplace. So, if I look at the market over the next 5 to 10 years, to specifically answer your question, Angela, I see that from the industry sector point of view, we'll be growing strongly and evolving into something which is more very heavily focused on taking technological advantage and IP and innovation and finding ways to commercialise that because that's where our industry needs to go, and I can see that momentum building. So I think in the next 5 years you'll see a lot more emphasis on that in Australia. From the demand side, if you looked at EVs and autonomous vehicles, I think Australia is probably a little bit behind at the moment, the adoption curve for EVs around the world. So I think that that's going to change quickly. So I think we might have a slow start, but I think we're going to catch up very quickly, and you'll see the demand for those products ramp up very quickly. And I also expect that the regulatory environment will start to spin to something that's more strong and supportive of that as we look to making changes that are, environmentally sustainable as well as, good for our industries. In terms of autonomous, I suppose I think we're actually ahead of the world in a lot of ways down here in Australia. So if you look at research and development for AI and for autonomous technology, there's an awful lot happening around the world. But if you look at sectors where it's already commercialised, I'd say Australia's ahead. So you can look to Australia and you can say, well, our mining sector is probably more autonomous here than used around the world. You can look at our ports and you'll see that they're already fully automated, whereas in other places around the world they're not. If you look at some of our, logistics and shipping, they're very heavily automated, and those are markets we invest today, and that's really exciting for a company like AED because we're located in the same country. That's a domestic market for us, and it's available today. So we can go in and plug in an autonomous vehicle and it will integrate with an existing ecosystem. Whereas in a lot of other places around the world, they're waiting for the regulatory approvals to commercialise that technology. So I see it as an area where we're actually ahead of the curve, and that gives us a strategic advantage here.
All right. Thanks, Shane. I think we might move on, but well said. And I might just throw it to the other panel members to see whether there's any last final comments before we throw it into the Q&A session, so that we have the opportunity for the other participants to ask questions. So, Ken?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that you gave a very good summary, Angela, of the broad range of capabilities and facilities and infrastructure that we've got. I think what I would say is that the rate of investment in emerging facilities is continuing to grow. So one of the questions in the Q&A talks about connecting startups to companies and the appetite between that. The issue is about creating common problems and common opportunities. So if the startup is in a space where it's trying to solve a problem that a corporate or a type of industry is trying to do, then it's more likely there's going to be those connections. And if I think in new facilities that we've got coming through, within Victoria, we talked before about strengths. In additive manufacturing, it's an absolute deep strength right across the board, and you can see it not only in the collaborations across universities and research. So you've got Swinburne, and you've got Swinburne University and CSIRO that put together a new test lab facility, which is very much focused on carbon fibre composites and how that works. And at Monash, we've got the Woodside Future Lab, which has expanded into our broader Woodside New Energy relationship, which is a state-of-the-art integrated materials additive manufacturing facility. So I think part of the heart of what we're able to do in Victoria is that we're able to connect the meta-scale industry problems, not only for Australia, but also for the rest of the world, and then really bring together interesting collaborations across research, startups, and translation into spin-outs as well. So it's a very vibrant space at the moment. You're on mute, Angela.
You're on mute, I think.
I am on mute. Any final questions?
So I can just add a comment. If you've been following the news, Singapore just announced in Jan 2021 to grow the manufacturing sector by 50% over the next 10 years. And I think the future of advanced manufacturing, it's not about the cost anymore. It's not going to be a cost-based advantage, but it's more about the technology. It's about the IP generated. It's about, honestly, it's about the speed of innovation. It's about production, right? And these are sort of the areas that, to get back to what Prof. Ken was talking about, it relates to where startups and corporates can collaborate and produce these new outcomes. And yes, you know, to the second part of the question, we do see countries becoming more and more insular, particularly because of the pandemic. But that doesn't mean that product, solutions, services cannot be taken overseas and adopted by organizations across the globe. So I certainly see there are a lot of opportunity for collaboration and for growth, particularly in advanced manufacturing.
Yep, absolutely. And so what we might do now is, while we have everyone here, is open it to the other participants to ask any questions to our panelists. I think we've answered most of the questions through the Q&A. I think there's 7 open questions and 6 that have been answered.
I can see one there, Angela, around what role we would play with Invest Victoria, particularly around talent. Yep. That's Deanne's question, so I'm happy to just have a go at that.
Sure.
And interestingly, pleasingly, during COVID, we certainly have been able to continue to bring in specialised talent into Victoria for our investors who are working on specific projects and programs. One of the national initiatives that was launched has come into play during COVID is our Global Talent Task Force and Global Talent Visa, which actually leads to permanent residency for the visa holder as well. So we've actually found a number of our tech companies who were already looking at investing or already had talent hubs in Victoria, but are further incentivised because they can bring down tech talent as well through the Global Talent Visa. Here in Singapore, the Australian government has one of 4 of their teams, their global talent teams based here, and there's some fantastic examples of talent either directly connected to current investors or, if you like, free talent that's there and ready to invest. The role for Invest Victoria is working with individual companies. There's no set number of employees. In fact, we're more interested in tech and innovation. And this is a real shift from the old foreign direct investment approach in terms of how many employees, regardless of what work they're doing. So we are very interested in the tech, in innovation, and by default then that is the types of jobs that will be generated from that investment. I just want to add, to use a word, the ecosystem. I think one of the things that we're looking for as well in those who are coming to invest is how they want to contribute or be part of the ecosystem. We know that's certainly something, and it means that we're developing talent together, homegrown talent, and then also leveraging, you know, state or federal government programs to bring talent in when needed. And happy to include some links. I think my team, Annie and Holly, are on the line now too. They can also include some links there as well if anyone wants more details.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. I'm glad you responded to that question. There is one here that has grabbed my attention, and that is some really good technology being developed at universities like Monash, Swinburne and CSIRO across batteries, critical minerals, recycling, automation and other areas for possible tech collaborations or linkages. Are there areas for possible tech collaborations or linkages with Singapore? Would someone like to, perhaps, Shihitra?
Yeah, I can give that a shot. SGInnovate, we work very closely with CSIRO already. So I think happy to work with the different universities. I mean, to be honest, it's a case-by-case situation because we invest in deep tech. We see a lot of potential for launching deep tech into Asia, North Asia particularly, and the globe. Energy, batteries, these are things that certainly are in the next gen, and they are certainly considered to be deep tech. But we'll have to have that conversation, Mark, and we'll have to have it on a case-by-case basis. I can't make a blanket statement to say how we could collaborate across these various solutions, but certainly happy to have that discussion and figure out individual levels of collaboration.
Yeah, I think, thanks for that. I think if there's any particular questions you'd like to ask as well after this session, we're happy to hand out our email addresses. I hope that's all right with Shane and Ken as well, and myself included, to take the discussion offline if need be. And just looking at some further questions, I think some have been responded to already, and we've got 5 open, 8 answered. So I'm just going to have a look at some of them.
As you are, Angela, can I just add in a little bit more there from the Invest Victoria perspective as well around those collaborations, and also Global Victoria, because as the Victorian Government Trade and Investment Office, we actually get to have, I'd say there's three pillars to our work. One is the trade, so working with our startups, our exporters to access new markets, but also to partner across the region. I think there are huge opportunities there in the sectors that are listed. Also here for us in ag tech, in health tech, in fintech and reg tech as well. We're actually running some programs right now in that tech space. The second is investment, which is where we've largely been focused today. And the third pillar is education, that's tying all of this together. I think one of the innovations that's happened over the past 12 months with Invest Victoria is specific compacts and agreements with all of our universities around understanding their priorities and understanding how we can actually help to drive that engagement, whether it's here in Singapore or globally as well. So I think that's going to pay dividends. And I'm thinking he's got his hand up as well. So I'm going to hit on this one.
Thanks, Rebecca. Over to Ken.
Yeah, Rebecca, it's a good point, because the other point around Australian universities, which isn't the case with all universities around the world, is that all universities and all research hubs do collaborate internationally. That's why we get such a positive bang for our book. But there are a lot of Australian universities, in particular in Victoria, that have physical presences within different countries as well. So obviously in Monish's case, we are in India, in China, in Italy, in Malaysia. We've got the largest international campus in Malaysia, but we've also announced that we're opening a campus which will be opening later in Indonesia. You've got RMIT in Vietnam. There's just a whole raft of ways. So we don't only bring people who are used to understanding markets in other parts of the world, we actually have things that are moving between. So we have talent that goes between different markets. We have startups and spin-outs which we take to different markets as well. So I think one of the real advantages, go back to what was said before, I think it's absolutely the case that Singapore has really got behind startups and innovation. You can see that. And what you've got in Australia is just this amazing talent in terms of research, development and innovation. And the more that we can connect these innovative hubs from, so in our case, from Victoria out to Singapore, but to other parts of the world as well, the more rapidly we're going to start to address some of the big problems around food, energy, water, general sustainability as well. So really exciting time for us all to be talking and hopefully translating into collaboration.
Great, Ken. I think we've only got, sorry. No, we've only got 2 more minutes before we wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Professor Ken spoke about, because I can't agree more. And I think it also answers one of the questions which I saw on the panel in terms of accessing investment capital, because it is not just about, it's about collaboration across the countries. It's no longer about, you know, one giant corporate producing end-to-end solutions that they have to fit in. If there's a solution in Australia and there's a solution in Singapore, and we can stitch those together as an offering to take to the globe, and it's going to make it stronger, we absolutely should work on it. And that's how the startup mindset is I guess it makes it more agile from that perspective of being you know, on the same competitive level playing field as the large big boys are. In terms of investment capital, you know, there's about $70 to $80 billion that was raised just in China last year for startups. So to put it in perspective, yes, some of the VCs might have trended towards health tech. There was a little bit of a panic button pressed where everybody said, oh, there's a pandemic, so let's just invest in med tech and health tech. but that'll come back, and advanced manufacturing is never going to go away. So it is a priority. And to all those startups out there, keep doing the fantastic jobs you guys are doing, because we have a need for all of you. And advanced manufacturing is waiting to deploy your solutions.
Well done. Thank you for that. I think we've reached the end, and I'm going to thank you so much for everyone. And I know Shane, again, we had the news this morning that Julian couldn't attend, but thank you so much for stepping in his shoes. Not that you need to be in his shoes, but anyway. All right, so I'd like to thank the panelists, and I'd like to also now hand it back over to SGInnovate to say the final words before we close.
Yes, thank you, Angela, Professor Sloan, SzeKi, and Shane for the amazing panel discussion. It's a pity that we don't have enough time to get into even more in depth. So yeah, as Angela has mentioned, feel free to reach out to the speakers to continue the conversation offline. Yeah, we'd just also like to thank our attendees for tuning in, and do keep an eye out for a post-event email with the recording, as well as ways to connect with our speakers. Without any further ado, have a good rest of the day, and we hope you join us at future events. Bye.